Here.
Yurosek.
Yeah. Yurosek. Director Thibault.
Here.
I'm sorry, Director Atkinson.
Here.
Director, okay, I'm sorry, I lost my place. And Director Parris.
I'm here, thank you.
Okay. Craig,
You didn't call my name.
I'm sorry, Adam.
That's okay.
Director. Director Stannis. I'm so sorry, you guys caught me, we got started before I was ready. Phil Stannis. Here. And Craig Harden.
Here.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Patty.
That's okay.
We're on the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Dennis. Second by Derek. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Public comments for non-agenda items. Any public comments? Thank you all for being here. Move along. Special presentations none. We're on consent agenda, payment of bills through November 30th, 2018. Add or Peter? Okay.
Good morning, I can take this. So included in your packet is a memo that summarizes the invoices we're recommending be paid. I can go through them real quickly. The first one being admin services for 2018 to ABAC for $35,000. This is for the approved budget for 2018. Road-Trans for $1,200 for services in October. We had a refund for some overbilled administrative assessments for $11.60. Invoice for Mr. Park's service for the month of October, $33,041.01. And then we have two invoices for Todd Groundwater, one for September services for $25,547.70, and services for October, the amount of $21,359.68. Based on our current checking account balance at the end of November, if all of these invoices are approved, we'll have $13,046.83 available. Also should mention that there's a supplemental invoice that was submitted today. You should have received a copy on your desk. That was for $10,000 to Palmdale Water District for their 2018 administrative services fee. And that again is per the approved budget.
And at the end of that payment, we'll have $3,000.
Have a whopping $3,046.83.
And I'm assuming we have some bills out there now that we're expecting to be paid.
We have a few invoices or outstanding invoices that we anticipate receiving. And then if we're able to approve the budget and setting the 2019 assessments, we can get those fixed invoices for 2019 assessments out quickly.
We're going to hopefully be doing that today.
That's the first item, action item on our agenda.
Yeah. Okay, is there a motion to approve the payments of the bill with the supplemental bill from Palmdale Water District?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the payment of the invoices as presented, including the one from Palmdale Water.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Second by Adam. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the payment of the bills as presented, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're on item B, Treasurer's Report, month ending October 31st to November 30th. Update on outstanding administrative assessments and production reports. Matt?
Yes, so including in your packet is a copy of the Treasurer's Report for month ending October 31st, 2018, and then handed out today is the Treasurer's Report through the end of November. Just because we had some time to do this, we thought we'd present the end of November's today. So both those are being recommended for approval or accepting and filing, those two Treasurer's Reports.
Okay, is there a motion to accept and file the Treasurer's Reports? Moved by Dennis. Second by Leo. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's approved unanimously. We're on minutes of October 24th, 2018. Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 24th, 2018?
I move that we approve.
Motion made by Adam. You weren't here.
I was here, but not on the board.
On the board.
Second.
Second by Dennis. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And you are allowed to, actually, you are allowed to vote on the motion as long as you've read them. You were here, you're an alternate. I don't see any problem with you voting on it.
Aye.
Okay. Anybody opposed to motion? Seeing no opposition, motion's carried unanimously. We're now on item D. Any correspondence we need to review?
They're included in the board packet, but no action needed.
No action needed, great. Thank you. Advisory Committee report, Dennis, are you here? You are?
I will defer to somebody who attended the meeting.
Oh, good. Hi, Stan.
Stan Powell, City of Los Angeles. I'd like to say the memo speaks for itself, but it's not in memo format. So, I'm not sure if you have any particular questions on this. The advisory committee did not come back on any of these topics with specific recommendations. We had discussions about them. I've seen my name several times, maybe I'll just clarify under C and D, dealing with the COD contract amendment, which I think also goes into the new staffing approach. My comment basically really was that I think the judgment has some specific roles for the Watermaster engineer, and I think however we try and handle the budget, we have to respect that the Watermaster engineer has a specific role, which was probably hard to express in that meeting. The other one I note for you is we did discuss the rules of order. I note that the rules of order at one point was to be on this agenda. They are not on this agenda. I had submitted written comments to the advisory committee. Hopefully through that it's been more broadly distributed. I had some questions, distributed them to Craig. Craig has provided some comments back to me that I've also distributed to the group. And at this point, I kind of wanted to take what I had submitted, rework it based on some of Craig's comments. But that's where that stands as far as the advisory committee. We had some discussions. We have something out there. Discussions that brought it to Craig, and I don't think we have anything specific to bring to you. So unless you have any other questions, that's the report.
Great. Any
Thank you.
questions? Derek?
I did have just one comment. I've been fortunate to sit through the advisory board meetings, so I get to hear the advisory board and their comments, which is very productive. I know that there was no consensus. I just encourage, if there are advisory board members here or public that was there, if they're on, especially the agenda or on the report where there was no consensus, if they're willing to come up and talk about their points as we go through those, I'd encourage them to.
Okay, great. Thanks, Derek. Any other advisory committee members who would like to report at this time? Okay, moving on. Action items. 9A, 2019 Administrative Budget and Administrative Assessment, Consideration Possible Adoption, Action to Adopt Resolution Number R1830. Matt?
Yes. Good morning. If you recall, at the last meeting, we gave a presentation on the draft 2019 admin budget. So included in your packet today is a brief memo with the proposed resolution, and attached to the resolution is Exhibit A, being our 2019 administrative budget. So the budget is broken out into two sections, top section being revenue. The revenue is unchanged from what was presented at the last meeting. And in the first page, on the first page of the memo staff report, we've included a table that shows the assumptions of the projected production, both broken out between fixed and variable. This was a request from one of the advisory committee members to see what those assumptions are based on for the revenue. So we've included that. you can see we have a carryover or loss from 2018 budget of $74,451. So we're entering 2019 as a deficit. This budget includes that. Total revenue, taking into account that deficit, is $546,092 for 2019, based on our best guess on production. And then down below that is our projected expenses. I should point out a couple of assumptions, and the next few agenda items takes these assumptions into consideration. Under the contracted administrative expenses, we're showing $108,901 for the proposal that we're going to present today. And that's for AVAC, Palmdale Water District, and Quartz Hill Water District to team up and provide admin services for 2019. And then we've also included in the budget a proposed amendment that will also be considered today for 2018 scope of work with Todd Groundwater. And that's an amendment in the amount of $98,653. We're showing that in the 2018 column. And then we're also showing amendment number 2 with Todd Groundwater, which would be a fee reduction and scope of work reduction for 2019 of $111,412. So based on what we're showing here in the 2019 budget, if all this holds true, we'll have a balanced budget at the end of 2019 with roughly $3,000 balance at the end of 2019. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question. We've always known we're going to be running very close with a $5 assessment of running the Watermaster board. We're going into, I believe, our 3rd year, and we have been squeaking by and working hard to do that. At a point where we start putting, and I realize Todd Engineering did a whole lot of new work and stuff that wasn't anticipated. But as we're going into our 3rd year and then our 4th year, our focus has to be on making sure that the judgment is fulfilled in this basin, that we're protecting this basin, that we're doing the studies necessary to know if the things we think are working are actually working. And as we move away from getting our rules and regulations done, that's where I'd like us to focus, or at least Todd Engineering to focus their time and energy. And if it's going to take more money to do that, I think we better start opening up that discussion. Because every one of us on this board have an obligation to make sure that basin is protected, and that what we're doing as far as our water banking and our water exchanges and getting everybody's production in place is working. And if we need more funds to make that happen, this board through the court has the ability to raise the administrative assessment. Not something I want to do, but I think we have an obligation to start having that conversation, and right now is probably the time to do it. So with that said, I'd like to kind of get consensus from the other board members on their thoughts. I will start with you, Derek.
You want to start with that side?
No, I'll start with you, Adam.
I agree with you. I don't think we have really done a good job. There are a lot of things to be done. Specifically, as you said, rules and regulations need to be finalized. It's been 3 years. Can everybody hear me?
No.
No,
Maybe I don't have something on.
It's
Hold on.
You're just not speaking loud enough.
Oh, okay. So, as I was saying, I agree with the chairman here about revisiting the assessment. The assessment is $5 per acre foot. It's not a lot. If you look at the assessment in other groundwater basin that has been adjudicated, that I deal with, it's considerably higher. Now granted, in the beginning, maybe they didn't go to the assessment that they have today, but it's been 3 years, and it is time for us to reassess and see if there is a need for additional assessment in order for us to do our job. And we do need to get the rules and regulations done. I don't believe there has been extensive hydrological analysis regarding harm to the basin in case somebody is pumping from a specific area, which probably would be even more extensive and more expensive to do. So that said, I still think though, we need to figure out if we can reduce our expenses as well. In other words, instead of jumping directly into a higher assessment, let's see what we can do. As this morning we talked about, I'm assuming you're going to discuss what the committee discussed this morning. I think the agencies have staff within them that could help. I have suggested several times that this work should be gratis. LA County Water Works District 40 is still interested in doing that, and we're willing to do that to the extent that we can be used for certain functions. We're not going to charge the Watermaster, at least for the time being. So until I see that we have took some effort in reducing our expenses and using our resources, I think we should reserve going directly to increasing the assessment, and that's how I see. So maybe, try the next 6 months, see how we do with reducing our expenses, realigning some of the responsibilities from Todd Groundwater to the agencies. We have staff, we have engineering staff who are professional, registered civil engineering in the state of California. I'm sure that they're more capable of doing some of this work. And for those agencies that are willing to do this work gratis, let's explore that and see how is that going to fit into our budget. And if we still at that point cannot make ends meet, then I'll be for raising assessment or considering raising assessment.
Thank you.
As everyone knows, I have been very concerned for probably 6 months that our financing was not sustainable. But I see what's being done as kind of creative budgeting. Not that it's wrong, it's just different. It's kind of like the new math in schools. It's not wrong, it's just different, very different. I have been asking around the people dug in the fight that were there for 15, 16 years, how we arrived at $5 an acre foot. And the only answer I've got from several people is that that's all that they could get approved. That's the maximum that they could get approved with the parties that were involved. So it's not that the court's saying $5 is it. It's what was able to be agreed upon. So if anybody knows anything different about how we arrived at $5, I've been trying to find out, and that's the only answers I've got. I think the group has the work that was done, committee work that was done this morning, I think is doable. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I'd heard that it's, by statute, it's illegal to approve a public agency budget that is not balanced. Craig, is that something
I can't comment on that, but we're not a public agency, so.
Well, okay, that part's right. We're doing public business. Anyway, that's my comments. I think we need to give the committee's diligent work a chance, see how the agencies, of course, will AVAC and Palmdale can work this out. Certainly the hourly rates are less. If we can get the job done and not have to go back and raise it, I think that's beneficial to everybody. But we do need to have a sustainable budget process.
Thank you, Leo. Dennis?
Yeah, I'd have a hard time voting to increase it because for people we represent, $1 is not $1, it's thousands of dollars. And I think what we had discussed this morning with making some changes in the administrative team, I think is going to show some positive results. And I think we should be going for more grants and, you know, other funds that might be out there. If we're a depressed community in some cases, we can use that to our advantage. There's Clean Water Act. There's a lot of things out there. We're just going to figure out how to make our situation fit in their slots. So, and you're right, Leo. $5 was all that could be stomached at the time to get everybody to sign on to the judgment so we could get moving. And I think, you know, we're getting over the hump on a lot of these items that we've been working on, and I think it should smooth out. And still don't know if $5 is going to be enough, but I want to give it a try as long as possible. Get the rules and regs out, get a couple more things out, get the well permits streamlined. And we get past the metering, get past through those big items, I think we'll be in a lot better shape.
Great. Thanks, Dennis.
Yes, thank you. You know, I guess first thing I would say is that, you know, I think I've mentioned from the public is, you know, I think prioritization is critical. If you're going to ask staff and administration to create a budget, it's very important for them to understand what the priority of the board and the Watermaster is. So I know that that is in the budget. I encourage board members and public to voice their opinion of what that is and to make sure that we mandate that as the budget, knowing that we have constraints. I speak for a landowner as well as the landowners. You know, we have angst of it increasing rates. I think coming from the private sector is we know within our means of what our revenues are. Let's figure out how to operate the business. I think that's number one. I think number two is, you know, if I take a look at the proposal from the different districts of how they, you know, recognize their cost structure. So I'm referring to Palmdale and Quartz Hill as well as AVAC. You know, in their task order, if you look at, and I know I'm jumping a bit, but if you look at the task order and their hourly breakdown, the fee structure is what I'm curious about and would like to ask some more questions on. Is you take a look at, there's about 2,100 hours budgeted, I think, Matt, if I'm correct. Yeah. And in task order 2, it's about 840 hours in task order 2. If I add it up, I did it real quick, so I may be wrong then. But within those are well applications. Those are transfer and storage. These are fee structure, application and process fee. And so when I go up to the top line of the budget and I look at $25,000 budgeted for those fees, I don't see a balance there. And so I really question, are we charging the right amount? If we're putting hours in and we're billing ourselves for that, I think as a board you've spoken about this, and as a public and as the advisory board, those should be properly costed. So, you know, I encourage an evaluation of that. And do you want me to do one more and then you answer, or would you like to?
Well, we can hit on that real
Sure.
quick. So we did talk a little bit about that in our ad hoc committee meeting this morning. And the goal going forward is we need to revise, as you said, the fees that we're collecting for things like small pumper applications, transfer forms, etc., to where we're covering, the producer that's requesting that information or review is covering the cost of that. That cost shouldn't be borne by all the producers through the admin services fee. So we need to have a future item where we discuss the fee structure, what we're charging for these different tasks, either increase the flat fee or go to a cost basis where we're collecting a deposit, tracking actual time, and then charging for that process. And then that will, as you stated, will reduce some of this admin expense, because that will be covered by the producers, individual producers that are requesting the forms.
probably won't reduce expense, but increase revenue, right? Balance it. Good. Okay. Thank you. And the last thing was reimbursement of what I'd say, operational costs. So, i.e. the litigation we've had with Lake Valley. That is, I think we saw a bill for $20,000 was brought up by one of the landowners. To me, I don't think that's the burden of, this board as well as, all the participants in it. That should be the burden for the. If we want it, we should be able to get that money back and support ourselves as well.
Yeah, I'm going to address that in my report. There was a strategic move made with the Long Valley matter not to seek costs in that, just because I wanted the court to rule cleanly without having any thought that there was now going to be a financial burden on them related to the motion. But that's changed now as far as I'm concerned. Going forward, if we have to do a motion like that again, we're going to seek costs, full cost recovery for that, which we did not get from Long Valley, but it was a strategic decision to get an order from the courts that we can enforce and use with subsequent people. So I hear you exactly, and that's an intention going forward in enforcement actions to start recovering costs for if we have to go to court to get enforcement of the judgment.
I'm not sure I built consensus there to give you my opinion, so hopefully that was helpful.
Derek, thank you very much, and I guess to kind of summarize, I think the consensus is with this board from all the meetings I've been to is if there is something we can bill for that people are getting, we need to bill for it, and I agree with Craig, the tactical reason why he did not on this last motion was pretty important for all of us, but going forward, if we have an opportunity to get costs and attorney fees back, I think we should absolutely go for that. And maybe the consensus is that we should. Okay. That's what I thought. So, and I think Matt and Peter, you do know that as far as going forward, if we're putting in time and money into somebody's private well application or project or something, we're going to go for that. So, okay. All right, any further discussion?
One more point I think is, and I think staff will talk about this, is the small pumper billing, retroactiveness of that. That's a significant amount of dollars we're talking about. I was given it to by a landowner of what that is, but it could be north of $50,000, $60,000 if we look at it based upon the rates. So, over the last 4 years, I think it's something that we should discuss or should have staff to work through.
When you say small pumper bill, what do you mean?
The small pumper is under the judgment, so, basically 5.1.3 is roughly about, call it 3,800 acre feet-ish. And so if you took $1 for 2016, $5 for 18, $5 for 19, it roughly get about there. So, if we talk about balancing budget or doing additional work that we need to do, that's seems to be an easy, a low-hanging fruit.
Thank you.
I think the rationale, if I recall, was it's going to cost us more money to collect that money. It's still a concern. I don't know, maybe billing every 3 years or so make more sense, as you suggest.
I think you're right, Adam. When it was $1, that first year was $1.
Right.
The stamp
was
cost
$1.
But if we lump 4 or 5 years together,
Right.
or we can get it put on their tax bill, where it's automatic and you get a check. 40 or 50 grand would make our budget look a lot better right now.
Do we know from staff or from council if we can put on the tax bill to manage?
I thought that issue was discussed when it was ruled out. Laura, was that an issue that we discussed? But that would be a very effective way of collecting the money without us spending money on stamps and following through.
We did talk about it, but I don't remember what the outcome was.
Oh, maybe I'm confusing that with the deed inclusion, some language in the deed when the water rights change hands. That's what it was. I'm confusing Yeah, that actually a good idea to pursue, to see if it's doable.
Yeah, and every budget that we've approved, we've listed the small pumper revenue as deferred. So it's not like we said we weren't gonna collect it, deferred it. So, you know, Director Ariki brought up Waterworks offering to assist. This may be a good task for them to maybe invoice all of the small pumpers, reconcile the list, mail-in list, and invoice them, or work towards the process of getting on the tax roll for small pumpers.
I would say that tax roll would be more success rate than invoicing it individually.
Yeah.
Okay, good discussion.
They're welcome to that.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt resolution number R1830? And that's on page 35.
I move that we approve it.
Motion made by Adam to adopt resolution number R1830. Is there a second? Second by Dennis. Is there discussion?
So I just asked one question. I know that staff mentioned that they're going to go through the fee structure based upon their hours. Will that be part of, they'll come and revise or reforecast the budget based upon what they see?
Yeah, I think we'll have an amendment at some point once we figure that out.
So I would just encourage maybe as part of that motion, or
I think that will come up. We actually can do that in our next section where we're talking about the administrative duties.
Okay.
The proposal.
Yeah, that might be a cleaner way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? See no further discussion. All in favor of approving motion and resolution number R1830, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion's carried unanimously. We're on item B, consideration and possible action on contract amendment number 1 for contract year 2018 between Mount Valley Watermaster and Todd Groundwater.
Yeah,
Matt?
start off with this one. So included in your packet is a one-page amendment, and attached to that amendment is a memo from Todd Groundwater dated August 3rd, 2018. And I think you've all seen this memo in previous board packets as informational. Just a little background, as you recall, we entered into a 3-year contract with Todd Groundwater for 2017, 18, and 19. The 2018 contract was for $289,648, and based on the memo from Todd Groundwater, you see they've had more effort in 2018 related to 4 tasks: project management, meetings, rules and regulations was a big part of this amendment. Their level of effort, just because of the number of drafts that were being reviewed by the producers and brought back for comment, increased the budget there for the level of effort. Metering compliance went over budget with under 11,000, and then well application transfers and enforcement was 24,000. So some of that 24,000 obviously is offset by fees collected as part of well applications. But staff is recommending approval of this amendment, number 1, in the amount of $98,643. You have to answer any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, if I may, do you know what was the amount of fees that were collected for the well applications, transfer enforcement?
I think in round numbers about 20,000.
So we were very close.
Very close.
So,
Well, this 24,000 is just the amendment portion. There was some
Oh, that's
additional
right, that's
fees
right.
that were part of the original scope.
so what was, do you know what was the total amount?
No, I don't, off the top of my head.
So we collected 20,000, and the amendment is 24,000.
Correct.
I would imagine that the total amount probably 60, 70,000.
I don't know, I wouldn't want to guess, but.
All right.
Think about the total budget.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
So we collected 20,600. And the level of effort for that, for 2018 was $38,208 for water quality and well permitting.
That was the original budget?
That was approved budget, yes. So
60.
So 61 is, 61 was the actual amount. Yeah, it's on our.
Next meeting.
If I could say something quickly about the 60,000. So part of that was keyed off of the process that we went through to get everything in the rules and regulations. Remember, we had a backlog of about 30-some well applications that we had no process at all in place to manage. And so I have to admit there was significant inefficiencies as we went through that to get that process figured out. And I think that we have things running a lot smoother now. So if we're going to do a fee assessment, I think that, a fee evaluation to make sure we're covering our costs, I think that as long as we are looking at that, we can just not look at January through about April, because that was the process of really trying to get it in place. And there was a lot of back and forth on that. I mean, this was also teaching, each of the 30 applicants what the form was and what they should write down and how everything should look. And there was quite a bit of back and forth with everyone just to get that going.
But do you think, though, fellas, that the teaching part is going to disappear? Because there are new applicants.
No, and I think that that's what administrative staff is now putting into their budget to manage, because the telephone rings a lot. And Patty is now handling all of that. People call us, we send them to Patty. And
I see. So the teaching you were referring to was done by you and your staff, as opposed to the got it.
Well, in fairness to Phyllis also, and we were very aware of it, as new well applications came in, we didn't feel it was appropriate to charge the first ones in line the cost of us getting our rules and regulations and getting our templates together and all that. So there's a lot of hand-holding and working the process with the applicants. So, and now we're a lot more streamlined, and now it's going to be an administrative task.
I think it's still not covering it completely, but I think it's much closer than it was in the first half of this year.
Great. Okay, any discussion? Is there a motion to approve amendment number 1 to the Todd groundwater contract?
One last question maybe for Dallas. In the other 3 items, do you see the efficiency that you strive for the well applications in any of these stats? In other words, are we evolving to become more efficient in doing our job?
Yes, I think so, absolutely. I mean, it's a process to learn sort of what we need to check and what we need to focus on as we move through these applications. And we work constantly with staff on the details of that. Someone calls and someone submits an application, we need to make sure that they're not a defaulted party, or if they are, that the attorney's aware of it. We need to make sure that they aren't on opt-out list. We need to make sure that they aren't on a small pumper list already, or that they aren't a successor in trust to someone on a small pumper already. So there's more to it than just going, hey, here's a well, good job, and moving on. It's quite an intricate process. Having said that, staff has become very competent at that.
But I was referring to the other 3 tasks as well. The meter compliance, the rules and regulations, the project management and meetings. As we becoming more efficient, were there inefficiency in conducting that business?
There's tremendous amount of inefficiency in the meter installation program, and that continues. I can't believe we are this far along and we have 46 parties out of 100 and whatever, parties that are not yet in compliance with meter installation. I never thought that would happen. I remember this board looking at me and saying, should we give everyone an extension? And we all agreed 3 months, absolutely. So that continues to be a drain on our time. Todd Groundwater felt that we couldn't possibly cover all of that in our current budget, so we began to try to manage some of that internal offline so that you weren't charged for that. It's continuing to be. Sorry?
Coming from computer world.
Okay. It's
Can you-
continuing to, I thought
you mute
maybe
that,
my
Betty?
rant was getting somewhat upset here. So if we could just get over that hump, I know I've said that a lot of times, and it just continually feels like, you know, we're right there. Parties are talking with us. It isn't as if people are, some parties are not talking with us, but it isn't as if it's being ignored. It's just taking so long, and there are so many questions, and the process just continues to be a drain on the budget.
Phyllis, are you convinced that the trials and tribulations, the learning curve you've had to go through with these various tasks are not going to be passed on to the staff that's going to be doing it? What have you done to bring them up to speed where you're at?
Well, I hope staff agrees that we have been in the period of transitioning all of this for the last 4 years. I mean, I think we've been working with staff. We check everything. We're responsible for it, so we feel like we have to continue to review and check everything. But Patty and her staff are becoming incredibly efficient at fielding the questions and making sure that the parties are doing the right things with respect to the applications. The meter installation is just continuing to be an issue. So we have some money in our budget for 2019 to transition some of our paying to Quartz Hill Water District. Thank you very much for agreeing to help us on that. And yeah, so there's a transition process, no question about it. But we have anticipated that, and I think at least for the well applications, we're there. I think we're transitioned well with that.
In the issue of the meter installation, if you can come up with one thing or two things that are the challenge, the time-consuming issues, what would you say those are?
There's a variety of things. Many meters that are already installed are not installed to manufacturer specifications. The pre-approved contractors try to ask for variances, and that's always a discussion. Why is there a variance? What do we need to do? So I guess it's just a continuation of, you know, the learning curve of beginning to meter all the wells and coming into compliance with the rules and regulations as adopted by the board.
Just to be clear, once the staff has come up with doing what you've been doing, you still have to put your stamp of approval on it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
I'm sorry.
And we can discuss the amendment after we have the motion on the table.
I just had one question. So far as, you know, if you look at task 2 of your amendment there, I mean, that's almost 50% of your total cost. And I'm sure when you budgeted and your organization did, you understood the process that you go through. So as just a learning moment, feedback, I'm putting you on the spot here, Phyllis, a bit, but I think it's good for the board as well as everybody engaged, advisory board as well as, I mean, what could we have done better? What could staff have done better to manage the budget better and not have such a high run over?
Well, I think the three things that happened that were the result of you know, the inefficiencies and difficulties are the rules and regulations being approved in short segments. We felt that that was the way that we needed to move forward so that we could get some of the things that were associated with deadlines approved, but it did sort of present some inefficiencies. It would have been nice to have an attorney early. When Craig came on board, a lot of things began to smooth out because we had someone we could ask questions to instead of us reading and rereading the judgment and rereading the judgment again. That was another thing. The well application, I think that process really threw us for a loop. That was trying to come up with a process, so that was a lot of inefficiencies as well. And then, you know, 5 and 6 and 7 drafts of the rules and regulations, each one of them continually being revised, and questions and comments. really took a long time.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve amendment number 1?
I move that we approve amendment number 1.
Motion made by Adam, seconded by Dennis. Any discussion? See no further discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Now we're on amendment number 2. Matt.
So including the packet is amendment number 2. Attached to the amendment is a memo dated November 15th from Todd Groundwater. And just to recap, the third year of the existing contract with Todd Groundwater is an amount of $252,538. And what this amendment would do is reduce that by $111,412 to a total for 2019 of $141,126. This is what we included in the budget we just presented. And this kind of goes in line with the next agenda item, which we're proposing to shift some of those admin services that we just talked about from Todd Groundwater to Palmville Water District, Fort Sill, and ABAC. It does keep, we feel, sufficient money in Todd's contract for 2019 to focus on the annual report, the Sigma compliance, some project management. But I should note that this amendment only allows for Phyllis to attend 6 meetings in person and 5 via phone, if I remember correctly. And then focusing on the technical aspects of the rules and regulations and limited project communication with staff and attorney. So that's all I have to report, unless Phyllis wants to add anything to that.
Saving MS speaks for itself.
I have a question, if I may.
Please, Adam.
To fellows. Assuming that we continue to meet on a monthly basis, which that's still open to discussion. I'm not sure that we need to meet every single month. We're not attending 5 meetings during the course of the year and doing it by the phone. Would that impact in any way you function as a Watermaster engineer? I mean, obviously there will have be an impact, but will there be a significant impact that will impair you from doing your job effectively and efficiently?
I hope not. I mean, it's helpful to come and talk with people. I always look at the meetings as productive in a variety of ways other than just the meeting itself, but I certainly think we can manage it.
Okay. Maybe reduction of the meeting will also assist in that area. And not like it's something that needs to be evaluated by everyone.
More a point of information than anything else. Phyllis's out-of-pocket billed expenses for attending the meeting is less than $300. She would still be on the time on the phone, so her time would not be an issue. So we're saving $300 by not having her physically present, and I think there's a lot of benefits to her being here, but you know, that's more a point of information than anything else.
We were just trying to cut as much as we possibly could.
Right.
Further discussion?
My only point is, so far as information, probably is, I know Adam made this comment that, I mean, you're an engineering firm and you are a Watermaster engineer and you're not doing a ton of engineering work. And this budget doesn't show, I know it shows reporting, which is all important, but to Adam's point, hydrology, understanding it, I mean, we're cutting and we need to cut, we need to figure out how to manage a budget, but I think long-term, we need to figure out prioritization. I'll say it again, is, you know, what is priority to us and how do we do that?
Yeah, and I share that concern, Derek. Again, getting back to Todd Groundwater, I think it's most important that we know what's going on with that basin, and that's their job. That we know if what we're doing out there is fixing it or hurting it, that's their job. And that should be the #1 focus of this Watermaster. And this cut bothers me a lot. And that's why I started the discussion with, if we come to a point where we feel we aren't doing our job or can't do our job, what the court has asked us to do, then we have to find out how to get more revenue to do so. We're going to explore that in the next 6 months. We're going to start going where we can. We're going to start asking for attorney fees and costs where we can. And I think that has to be what we focus on now before we look at raising the administrative assessment. But at the time where it becomes clear that we're not doing our job, then we have to go back and do that. And I expect Phyllis to be the first one to stand up and tell us when that time happens. This cut bothers me the most of anything we've done in the last couple of years. So I want to look very closely at it. I will ask you at every meeting, Phyllis, are we doing what we need to be doing to protect that basin? And based upon that answer, we're going to have to make some hard decisions. Okay, is there a motion to approve amendment number 2?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Derek, second by Adam. Any discussion?
Maybe not the time to bring it up, but looking at next year and maybe a couple of years down the road, is it necessary to have a meeting every month? Could we go bi-monthly?
I think that makes sense, actually. I think if we could get through, again, I know I sound like a broken record, if we just get through rules and regulations, we could just get through meters on the wells, and then there was, I think that every other month would make sense, and directly answer to your question. And another thing that I thought of during answer to your question of what could we have done differently, I'd like for us to start thinking about enforcement. There are so many inefficiencies for people not reporting production and not getting meters installed. I mean, that is really, a huge time eater of us, and to just continually try to, and this is going to be staff time now. We have parties in this judgment that didn't report production in 2016, 17, or 18. So, it's really hard. I mean, I feel like that Todd Groundwater's main responsibility as Watermaster engineer is to monitor the safe fuel components, the largest of which is production. So, I would like the board in the future to think about possible enforcement, and we'll try to get some of that in the rules and regulations.
I think that subject's going to come up in our next, when we're talking about the administrative part of the budget. But Phyllis, I agree with you, and for Patty, I'd like that issue to be put on every agenda until we have a fix for that, and have a discussion each time about what we're doing to get compliance.
Suggest something that other groundwater basins have done and indirectly enforced reporting, and that is to use, I know it takes a little bit of work, but it gets people's attention, to take power usage and assume some sort of a well efficiency and convert that into acre feet and then send a bill. Now, if they want to correct the problem, put a meter. Otherwise, the Watermaster will continue to do that. It's just something to consider doing.
Yeah, I think that deserves a whole subject in itself, and we're going to talk about it in our next item, but going forward, let's, at least the next meeting, let's have a whole section on what we're doing to get compliance and what our options are for enforcement if we don't have compliance.
So we have a set of almost 10 letters in your packet here, pages 24 to 31, that are follow-up enforcement related. So we recognize this is the first kind of cut of names that have surfaced, and I'll give you an update on that, but it's definitely on the front burner.
Great, thank you.
Just one more comment maybe for the council on this is, I would say exposure of the board, the Watermaster. If we're not following through in some manner to provide our Watermaster engineer a process to allow them to find what balance is, what safe yield is, I would say that's, following the judgment and everything else, that's an issue. So I think it's as perfect as you guys said. We need to address it probably promptly.
Got it. Okay, we're on amendment number 2. There's been a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? See no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to approve amendment number 2, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Moving right along to item C, consideration possible action on contract. We did that. Item D, consideration possible action on proposal for 2019 administrative services. Matt.
Okay, so included in your packet is a proposal prepared by AVAC, Palmdale Water District, and Corso Water District. So this is a team effort between the 3 agencies. You can see all 3 agencies' general managers have signed this proposal. So as far as I know, they've all accepted what's laid out here. And it goes through and talks about the technical approach and scope of work that the admin team will be providing to the Watermaster. So it goes through several tasks, and then second to last page shows the kind of organizational structure or reporting structure for the overall Watermaster. And we've highlighted the positions that are part of this proposal. That includes myself, Peter Thompson with Palmdale Water District, and serving as administrators, working closely together. Patty Rose would be the administrative assistant and board secretary. Angel Fitzpatrick from PPAC would assist Patty on some of the technical things. Danielle Henry with Palmdale Water District would continue to oversee accounts payables, receivables, and prepare a monthly report, as well as invoicing. And then Chad Reed and Brent Byrne from Corso Water District have agreed to assist with metering and production reporting compliance. So we've gone through and estimated hours for each of the 4 tasks for the individuals that would be part of this team. And based on those assumptions and the hourly rates for the individuals, the proposal is in the amount of $108,901. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I would just, Phyllis, did you review this proposal?
Yes, I did.
I've reviewed it several times now through our different boards, and you guys did a great job on it. And as hard as it was for me to vote on the last amendment, this one is going to be a lot easier. So, any further discussion?
I just want to say thank you for the 3 agencies step up and try to solve this problem.
Darren?
Yeah, so I would just go back to my task 2 comments of fee structure, of the 840 hours. And then the task 1, I think Leo brought it up, which is a great side. That's 780 hours, and I know Patty, you're the bulk of that in hours, and I'm guessing that's meeting preparation. So, you know, is to the point of if you could go every other month or quarterly as the board sees fit and staff sees fit, that could probably be some reduction as well in cost.
Actually, let Patty respond. I don't.
Actually,
I think she does a lot more.
I do a lot
Communications.
of communications. I do a lot with first callers on law applications. I've been working a lot on meter compliance right now. I've been working a lot with Craig on enforcement. So that's where the bulk of my hours are.
So, I think
She has a cape if she doesn't wear it.
well, then I'd encourage, as you're looking at your fee structure, that, you know, you have capital costs, and we talked about some of those capital costs, as I think about them, is, you know, in the task order, preparing the documents. I mean, that's cost that needs to be passed through, not to the first applicant, but to all applicants over a period of time. So some of those costs that are in task 1, if that's correspondence for well application, that's part of the cost of an application, right?
And that is in the application cost. I usually just take the first phone calls, and then Angel, you know, she's carrying on with, especially the small pumpers. But right now, Angel's mainly working on the applications now, and I work a lot with Craig on enforcement, and I've been doing meters. And the other correspondence of questions coming in, transfers, I do the first contact on transfers, and I'm sure in the future I'll do the first contact on transfers. And then, but Angel has taken over the bulk of the small pumpers, and she's actually become a real whiz at those, and we're able to process those very quickly.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the proposal for the 2019 administrative services?
So moved.
Motion made by Leo, second by Dennis. Any further discussion? See no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. We're on item E, well applications, new production, small pumper qualifying replacement well. Consideration and possible action on resolution number R1831. I believe it's the Phyllis show.
Thank you. I'm on here, but I'm not able to forward, so I'm going to just ask you to help me flip.
I think I just did that.
Patty, our monitors aren't on here. Is there a way to?
Just gotta tap it.
Yeah,
Oh, there they are. Thanks.
Speaking of applications, we have several to go through. So first we have application for some new monitoring wells and new production. We'll quickly deal with those first because I would like for the board to consider, perhaps not today, but in the future, when we get applications for monitoring wells, I suspect that there's never going to be an issue where we would need to discuss that and waste everyone's time significantly on that. I think that when we have monitoring well applications, it would be, one of the expediting things would be is if the Watermaster engineer had time to, had the authority to approve these as they come in. The reason that I'm asking for this is that sometimes the regulators have been working with the applicants on monitoring wells, and they have reasons for getting them in the ground quickly. And in this particular case, we actually got a call from the Regional Water Quality Control Board saying, please don't hold this up. We would like to get the monitoring wells in the ground in order to do a fourth quarter water level monitoring event. And, you know, we said, well, you know, we need to go to the board. Well, we can approve them, but we need to go to the board. So we could avoid delays in monitoring wells going in the basin. It doesn't bother me if we wait till the next board meeting, but I just thought I would bring that up for your consideration. I don't know if you want to say anything about that now.
So is there a procedure we could set up giving our manager and you the ability to make that decision between the two of you based upon a consensus of this board? Is that what you're asking for, and then bring it to us for affirmation?
Yes, possibly. I mean, if it can't be allowed in the judgment, then that's fine. It's just that monitoring wells require no material injury analysis, and I'm pleased to be able to approve monitoring wells because we need them so desperately in the basin.
Right.
And we can all, and knowing that they're going in is very helpful. So I want to keep an application process in place for them. It just seems to me that the board might not want to continue to spend time on that one issue.
Do monitoring wells require drilling permit from the LA County Department?
They do.
No? They do. Yeah, my only concern, and I'll listen to that and remember, when the time comes for these wells to be abandoned, for whatever reason, we want to make sure that they get abandoned appropriately. There are a lot of open wells in the basin that threaten the water quality, basically, of the groundwater basin. So if there is some sort of a process in place where people, if they want to, whoever the owner of this well wants to abandon the wells, need to come back with a Watermaster, I would have no issue with you approving them outside the board here.
Derek?
Those monitoring wells, do we have access to that data, and can we use that as part of the needs for engineering?
So we absolutely do. It's public data. It goes to the regulators. So I have been begging everyone who has a well application for a monitoring well that I want their contact information and I want their water level data. And just FYI, we've got AECom from Plant 42, who's been providing us with their water level data. We've got LA County Sand, who has a lot of monitoring wells that they've been providing for their water level data. So we're building our database up as we go.
Phyllis, can we make it a requirement on approving the monitoring wells that they report that information to us? That might be a Craig question too.
I think we can certainly do that. This whole issue arose because they wanted a response immediately. And I counseled Phyllis that I'm more comfortable with the board approving these. I understand that we don't want to waste a lot of time on them, but I feel like this is a Watermaster board responsibility to know what's going on. And if we may have to have some other process in order to get board approval if we go to an every other month meeting schedule. But this has arisen one time when the regulator put pressure on Phyllis like crazy to get this done. But I think our process is correct the way we do it now. She makes a recommendation, you approve it. It's in a public setting in case somebody objects to, for whatever reason. I'm just loath to start tampering with the system that's working.
Yeah, and I don't disagree as long as we're meeting once a month. And,
Right.
Yeah. How long have these been in front of you?
I mean, you know, I think they came in like right after the last meeting, and then we didn't meet in November.
Okay, so that's the...
Just kind of got caught at the end of the year.
That was the rub.
Got it. John, please.
Can I make a statement regarding our mutual group? I think it's very important that these monitoring wells are vetted by the advisory committee prior to coming to the board.
And then they are going to the advisory committee?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think as long as we're meeting once a month, I agree with Craig. If we have to go to every 2 months, then let's bring it back up.
Sounds great.
Okay.
That's fine with me. Okay, so we also have a new production, which is a domestic well, single-family household. They will meter their well and they will pay a replacement water assessment. So we think that that was straightforward. In addition to the, and then I've provided a map. I'm sorry, go ahead. We've provided a map here for those two wells that we just talked about. The monitoring wells are shown here in the central portion of the basin, and a new production well in the southeast subarea of the basin. In addition to those two applications, we have applications for 15 additional parties that want to qualify as unmanned small pumpers, and they have provided sufficient documentation for us to make sure that they have complied with the requirements in the judgment to be a small pumper. So we are recommending that those 15 applicants be approved as well and added to the continuation that we're keeping now for keeping up with small pumpers. Because this board has asked in the past, I just have a couple of things there on that slide that summarize where we are to date. Since we finalized our small pumper qualification forms in February, we've had 27 new small pumpers approved. The 15 today will add to that and result in a total of 42 to date, because the judgment allows a maximum of 3 acre feet per year per parcel per household. That to date looks like it's somewhere around a maximum of 126 acre feet a year exposure for those applications. There aren't 42 additional parties. There are 42 additional parcels associated with the small pumper. But when we were talking about the possibility of continuing to look into small pumpers a while back with respect to administrative assessments, I think it's really important that we move forward with firming up the small pumper list and assigning APN parcels to that. We've tried to do that in a variety of fits and starts. We have parts of that together, but we should be able to find the information that was presented at trial, and we've not been able to sort of come up with that yet. But what I would like to do is to make sure that we know where we started, and we do that pretty soon, so that we don't have a situation where small pumpers are perhaps adding parcels or additional household to their sort of category that wasn't on the original small pumper list. What I'm trying to get to, and saying very clumsily, is this. I'd just like to know where our small pumpers are, how many there are, and what APNs are assigned to them. We'd like to have that starting list from the very beginning so that we can move everything forward. Right now, we have Exhibit C in the judgment. It has, more than the number of small pumpers that has been allocated in the safe yield in the judgment. There are 4,000 plus names on that. There's some duplicate names, some addresses that are not in the basin, so we think that it would be worth some administrative staff time to begin to get that list cleaned up so that we know what we're starting with. And that was my opportunity to get that little dig in while we're approving 15 new small pumpers. And most of them, as you can see, are located in the southeast. There's an inset map now that is shown in the sort of upper right quadrant of this map. And what you can see is that 14 of the 15 are all in the southeast area. We've had some help with realtors and others in the Juniper Hills, Pear Blossom area that are helping well owners in that area recognize that they do qualify as small pumpers under the judgment, and helping to accelerate that process. So that's why we've had so many in the last 2 meetings.
As so many thousand acre feet, the small pumpers have a pooled water, is that correct?
Yeah, it's 3,806, I believe, and we can look up, sometimes I misremember numbers, but that's right, they have a portion of the safe yield. Nonetheless, the judgment recognizes that there is going to be more production than that associated with the small pumpers, because the judgment anticipates that there will be unknown small pumpers identified. That's what's happening.
But the court says that they anticipate that it's de minimis as to what the number of additional small pumpers would be. So I know there's concern on the board that every time these applications are approved, we're wondering whether we're impacting pumping within the safe yield. And Phyllis very effectively does the numbers, but the day may be coming when analysis needs to be done on whether this is having an adverse impact.
Have you got a formula in your back pocket? Have you got an estimate? Because 146 additional acre feet out of the 3,000 is, 5%?
I don't.
Are we working on
That's really got
formula?
I think needs to be generated by the Watermaster engineer based on the hydrology. I don't think that's a legal analysis. I think that's a professional engineering analysis.
No, I'm asking Phyllis if she has one in her back pocket.
No, I don't.
Do we have a theory of how we're going to get to one? Or
I would like to start with knowing what we have now. I'm not convinced we know.
Oh, I know we don't.
Yeah. So,
that's what's scary about approving additional people pumping on a
right.
finite number.
So it would be really nice to know what we have now. I would say this, that's multiplied by 3 instead of 1, but most of our applicants are estimating that they're going to be using 1 acre feet a year, and most of the applicants are probably only going to use 1 acre foot a year or less, because in a lot of cases this is a domestic well with a single family household, and they're not doing a lot of additional watering. So
I'm just looking down the road. Is that when they pump more, it's going to come out of somebody's allocation, and I'm afraid it's going to come out of the landowner's allocation. So I don't want to run right up to the edge of the cliff and try to get brakes on it before we go over.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, so I know Phyllis clarified last meeting that there's more information than we see as a board. But it still concerns me. I think small pumper applications are taking advantage of the fact that application is so simple. To not put any estimate of how many acre feet they're gonna use, 1 to 3. And in fact, we've got an application that it's 2 families with orchard and garden and landscaping, and they're not gonna use more than 3 acre feet. So I think that's a red flag.
Every time we get the information, we do look on Google Earth, we document for ourselves what's being done now with that well. We do a quick estimate internally to make sure that we feel comfortable that not only do they qualify with respect to the less than 25 acre feet at any given time, but that they can continue their current situation at 3 acre feet or less. I mean, we do try to look at that.
And I assume that you make sure that they agree to install a meter.
So the small pumpers are not.
That's right.
Yeah, they're exempt from that requirement.
So how do you, though, if we intend to collect money from this, when they pump 3 acre feet, are we just collecting money for 1 acre foot?
The judgment is clear that the administrative assessments are based on 1.2 acre feet per year. That's actually.
Regardless if it's 1 or 3. Thank you.
But if we suspect
Because
that
they're
pumping
doing
is, on the judgment, if we suspect that pumping is excessive, Phyllis has the authority to request electrical records, go on site, check the situation out directly. So there is some enforcement meat behind that threat.
Yeah,
And many of these correspondence that you see in your packet that Craig will go on today, those are cases of small pumpers pumping more than 3 acre feet a year. And the Watermaster engineer has a requirement to inspect and monitor for that. And that's part also of my desire to get us up to speed as quickly as possible in what we have now, so that we know what to inspect and what to monitor.
And those people on the list that got the letters, we suspect are exceeding 3 acre feet and we're requiring them to get meters.
What method did we use to, is it just Google Earth or?
Yes. So actually, we were helped in this particular case by other landowners.
That's right, you did say that.
Who knew what was happening. But that's how we verified it. And it's pretty easy to see that, 3 acre feet is not a lot. And if you have a 40 acre parcel that's clearly being irrigated, done.
That kind of brings up the 3 agencies that are stepping in. Does that authority to do all this investigation transfer to those agencies?
It's a responsibility for the Watermaster and the Watermaster engineer. I don't see why we can't delegate.
Okay, any further discussion?
I would just reiterate Dennis's point and even Leo's that I think, this isn't de minimis. We're seeing a lot of activity. We don't know everything that's going on out there, and it's a priority, so.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve resolution number R1831, which is approving the new production small pumper qualifying replacement well applications?
And monitoring.
And monitoring wells. Everything that's on R1831. Motion made by Dennis, seconded by Leo. Is there any further discussion? See no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution number R1831, say aye. Aye.
And so there's the information that we have in the stream.
And temporary meaning a year or 10?
Yes, within 2019.
Phyllis, just from an educational standpoint, I'm sorry to take up everyone's time, but in your letter, you mentioned the fact that the one trying to transfer and the size of 2.3%. What's the threshold, your logic of, okay, when does it become impactful?
Well, in this particular case, you know, these Palmdale Water District wells are pumping much more than that, so I look at this almost within that error bar. But it has to do with the issue of a material injury analysis. So from the standpoint of water levels, which I think is the most sensitive component to analyze with respect to material injury on a transfer, you need to think through where additional wells are with respect to where this transfer will occur and what some reasonable, I mean, I do it analytically with just the well equation. There are a lot of different ways to do it. You could do it more numerically and more specifically using modeling, but we've been doing it very analytically back in the envelope calculation. And, you know, I just think we haven't hit anything that is the least bit significant yet, but I think you would need to be thinking about whether or not there's going to be 20 to 30 feet of drawdown associated, especially if it's a permanent transfer. And if the reasonableness criteria is more general, and that, in my mind, is whether or not a decrease in water level would impact a nearby well such that that would impact its beneficial use. In other words, its ability to reasonably produce, if it's an irrigation well, continue to irrigate, if it's a production well, continue to produce a water supply. And in each particular case, we would like to have the opportunity to consider whether or not we think it meets that threshold. And there hasn't been anything the least bit close yet. And if you think about 100 acre feet and reasonableness, if you're 800 feet away or 1,000 feet away, given a reasonable transmissivity of this aquifer, you're not even going to see it. So those are the types of things that we go through when we think about the transfer process.
Thank you.
Now, when the time comes that you feel that there is a need for hydrologic analysis for material injury, and you said that you were not doing the model, and I understand why, but do we really have an updated model to use? Or maybe we are behind in that and we need to start thinking about updating our existing model?
Well, this is what I think. I mean, you know, we're taking these one at a time and also trying to plan for the future as best we can. There's a couple of things. One is the USGS model covers the basin, and for the purposes of material injury analysis, it's probably sufficient to do that. I also will note that as more and more banking occurs in the valley, I've noticed that a lot of the banking proponents will invest in modeling and maybe improvements to the model. Maybe everyone would start with USGS and maybe make some improvements or maybe some upgrades. So I think that when we get to significant issues that we really need additional analysis, I think there will be some tools that might be available to us at a reasonable cost.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion to approve resolution number R1832, approving the application for transfer pursuant to the terms of the judgment attached to it? Motion made by Dennis.
Second.
Second by Derek. Any further discussion? Discussion at all? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Now we're on item G, establishment of a new bank account.
All right.
Go ahead.
Including in your packet is resolution number R-18-33, and this serves purpose for a couple things. We had some recent fraud with our citizens business account. It was caught by the bank, but they're recommending to close that account and open a new account. So this will establish us to do that. It will also, based on the new admin team, it will remove Dwayne Chisholm as a signer on the account and keep myself, but add Peter Thompson as the second signer. So it kind of keeps that split between two different agencies to be signers on the account. So we're recommending approval of this resolution to serve that purpose.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of resolution number R18-33.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Derek. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution number R1833, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion is carried unanimously. Administrators report.
I don't have anything to report unless Peter does.
Welcome aboard, which we do. Been here a lot. Engineers report. Phyllis.
Just a quick update on the meter installation. We now have 47 parties that have completed their meter documentation. We've gotten 9 parties in the last month, and I think that is directly related to the letters that went out. Administrative staff wrote a nice letter to the parties saying, attention, you are not in compliance with the meter requirements. Please comply. And I think that has really spurred a lot of activity. The phones are now ringing more than they were. It's really difficult for us to know how many parties have not yet installed meters because we just don't know that. We don't know how many wells there are associated with all of our parties. Nonetheless, we're moving this forward as best as we know how. We appreciate the assistance of the Public Water Supplier Steering Committee to address this issue, but we still have several of the public water suppliers that haven't complied with this also. So please recognize that we're asking for meter documentation. We want to make sure that not only do we have meters on the wells, but that we can rely on them. And I don't think that we have a big lift here. We're simply asking them to be installed per manufacturer specifications. So we really encourage all of the public water suppliers as well as all of the parties in the judgment to please comply with the meter requirements. Again, we appreciate very much the administrative staff assistance with the compliance letters. I think they're doing their job.
Great. Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you.
End of report.
Yes. One quick question on the meters. So far as I know, you mentioned earlier the number of meters that have not been installed. The ratio of the number of acre feet per year versus meters, you know, or if I'm not describing it well, and I apologize for that, but are we talking about, I mean, is it 47 meters equals what the total amount of
47 parties.
parties?
I don't know how many wells that.
That's much more than 47 wells. So
Right.
that's how many wells per party. So
So I guess my question is, as a percentage of the number of wells and the amount of acre feet that they're pumped, what percentage are we talking about meters not being installed?
we have, I don't have a percentage for you, Derek, but I will tell you that I'm going to guess that 80% or more of the acre feet are covered by the parties who have been working with us. There are several parties that have a lot of wells that have not quite yet completed full documentation of all of them, but we're working through those one at a time. So, you know, I hear your point, and yes, we've covered most of the acre feet in the judgment, but we need to cover all of it. So,
That's encouraging. 80% is what?
Don't disagree that everyone needs to comply, but it just as a magnitude. Thank you.
yeah.
And Craig, probably a good time as we're segueing into your report. For
Yes.
those who have not installed meters and are not responding to us, what would be the remedy for that?
Yeah, let me first back up with the people that are responding. We have had contacts with a number of parties that are small pumpers that we believe are operating in violation of the judgment. We spent the past couple of months discussing with them what their quantum of production is and have gotten in writing what that is. We have now followed it up with letters that you see in the board packet indicating that we believe that they are clearly pumping in violation of the judgment, that they need to cease doing that, get metered, and that pay administrative assessments and replacement water assessment. My philosophy in this is to first document what the violation is, send the letter, get the documentation back from them, which is coming in these cases on December 14th, and then invoicing them for administrative assessments and replacement water assessment. I don't plan on having to file anything if there's compliance voluntarily. If there is not compliance voluntarily, we will bring an action to enforce the judgment and seek costs and fees for doing so. I've gotten very good reaction to a number of the people on that list that's in your board packet. Phyllis has been on conversations, we've talked 3 and 4 times with council for a number of these parties, and they want to be responsive and cooperative. And now is the moment of truth. They have to December 14th to give us all the documentation. We think we know what their production already is to a great extent, but we're going to get that refined. For people that simply don't respond, and we have that in a couple of cases, parties that don't respond, we're sending out a further letter saying, you're not going to be able to hide from this. And if we have to go into court to enforce the judgment, or whatever relief we seek, we'll be seeking costs and fees to do so. So that's the remedy that we have. We're really in the enforcement mode right now, with getting the word out to people that compliance is in their interest. We have a good track record with Judge Comar. It's as should be expected. We're here to enforce his judgment, and that's what we've been doing in every time we've been in front of him. And I'm absolutely confident that he will honor a request to enforce the judgment against parties that aren't responding to us. But in certain cases, there are people that literally have just gone radio silent, and they're going to get a last request, because I want to avoid having to spend legal fees on that. But if we have to, we will have to do that. Or at least I'll make a recommendation to the board. A couple of updates from our last meeting. There was a hearing on Long Valley Road's effort to essentially be reclassified under the judgment. They were a small pumper. They believed that that was a misclassification, that they should have the right to prove up the production right. Judge Comar denied their motion, said, you are a member of the small pumper class, you shall comply with the judgment. So any folks in a similar place now who take the position that they were improperly, weren't given notice of the adjudication, is not going to fly with this judge. He made it very clear that he does not buy this. We didn't get notice, we didn't know what to do, we just heard about it when you sent us a letter. So I plan on leveraging that order that's in your packet at page 149 with other parties that might think, I shouldn't be in a small pumper class, I pumped 15 times that, never heard about this class action or this adjudication until now. We have a judge that's made it clear that's just not going to fly. The Selleck motion was granted, and so he moved to intervene to have this transfer right approved. He got a lawyer finally, and that sailed through without a problem. So both those motions were resolved in the way that we wanted to have them resolved. The order I put in is at page 154. I wanted these in the packet because I want the word to get out that we will not hesitate to enforce this judgment if we're required to do so, and you have a judge that's inclined to rule in that way. Letter B, the update letters to those pumping outside the judgment, I've already kind of covered that. That's on pages 24 to 31 of your board packet, the letters that have gone out. We are going to be following up on this. We expect documentation by the 14th, and then we expect meters to be installed, or in some cases, in one case particularly, they believe they have an adequate meter. We're not here to make you install a new meter just because we're ornery about it, but we want our people to check it out to make sure it's functioning correctly. So we are on following up with that. That's the enforcement tack that we're taking right now. Once we get the documentation from these folks that are generally in your board packet, get the metering going, they're aware that invoices will be coming for the administrative assessment and replacement water assessment. and I've taken the position that the administrative assessments start and the judgment closes 2016, 2017, 2018. My position on replacement water assessment is that it starts in 2018 because of the section 8.3, which we went to the court, that says you have a 2-year grace period. That's the position I've been taking with these parties, that they're going to owe replacement water assessment from 2018 forward. And if they don't comply with that, then we'll move to enforce it with the court and seek costs and fees to do so. That's it on the enforcement side. I also included, again, the memo from last month, or last board meeting, on parcels that straddle the basin boundaries. There's nothing for you to do on it. I thought it would be, I'd get approval as an action item, but I realize the advisory committee hasn't had a chance to look at it, and I welcome comments on that. I haven't gotten any to this time, but the plan is it goes to the advisory committee for their January meeting, and we'll be back in front of you at the January board meeting for approval. I think that's all the items I had to report on the board.
Thank you. We're down to item 13, board members' request for future agenda items. And I think we've already requested the one on the meters. Adam? And just for staff, the one on the meters and who hasn't complied, if we could have a list actually of the people or properties that have not complied, what action we've taken to get compliance, and then be ready with Phyllis and Craig to have a discussion on what our next step is to get compliance. It's been 3 years, so we need to stop. Okay?
Sounds good.
Makes sense?
Thank you.
Let's tackle that problem first. Any other items? Any of you want on the agenda? And our next meeting date, Patty?
Last Wednesday of January, isn't it?
It'd be January 23rd, 4th Wednesday.
January 24th?
January 23rd.
Anything else? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for attending. We are having Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Ad Hoc Committee in the conference room right after this meeting. So all of you here that are going to that meeting, just come on through here and into that door, and that's where we'll be. Thank you very much for coming.